Usually when we think of a revolutionary, we picture someone young, right? Like someone who wakes up every morning just eager to completely smash the system.
Oh, absolutely. Or, at least someone with a massive chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
Like a rebel whose whole identity is wrapped up in tearing down the old order.
Yeah, exactly. Tearing it down and replacing it with their own vision. But what if the biggest revolution in the history of science, and I mean a revolution that literally broke our entire understanding of the universe, was started by a guy who was desperately trying to keep everything exactly the same?
Which is such a wild paradox to think about.
It really is. Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are opening up a massive stack of research. It's anchored by this incredibly comprehensive Wikipedia deep dive into the life of Max Planck.
The man himself.
Yes. And our mission here is to really understand the physicist who accidentally birthed quantum theory. And he did this all while fighting, like tooth and nail, to preserve classical physics.
He really did not want to break the universe.
No, he didn't. And as if breaking the universe wasn't enough of a story, we are also going to explore how he navigated just unimaginable personal and political tragedies throughout his life.
So if you have ever felt reluctant to embrace a massive change, in your own life or in your industry, Max Planck is basically your ultimate historical patron saint.
Patron saint of reluctant change, I love that.
It's true. I mean, he was perhaps the most conservative, tradition-bound man you could possibly imagine, yet he triggers the most radical scientific paradigm shift in history.
It's fascinating. I mean, I was looking at his early years, fully expecting to find some, hidden rebellious streak, like a moment where he acts out.
Right, you figure there has to be something.
Yeah, but instead, everything about his upbringing just screams rules and order. He's born in 1858 in Kiel, Germany, and originally he's named Karl Ernst Ludwig Marx Planck.
That's quite a name.
It is, but by age 10, he actually drops Marx and just goes by Max for the rest of his life.
Which is a very pragmatic, orderly thing to do, honestly. Just simplify it.
Exactly. And he's born into this hyper-traditional family. I mean, his grandfather and great-grandfather were theology professors. His father was a law professor.
Wow. So he is just marinating in this environment built on strict logic.
Yes, strict logic and absolute truths. It's an intellectual pedigree that prizes stability above basically anything else.
Right. And that desire for, absolute structure, it didn't just apply to theology or law.
Yeah.
It actually showed up most vividly in his music.
Oh, yeah, the music part is so interesting.
It's a huge part of who he was. Planck was a genuinely gifted musician. He actually had absolute pitch.
Really? Absolute pitch?
Yeah, he played the piano, the organ, the cello. He even composed full operas during his university years. And the thing is, he didn't see science and art as these separate, opposed domains.
Zip is the math, right?
Exactly. For someone with absolute pitch, a musical note is either mathematically correct or it isn't. There's a fundamental, elegant structure underlying the sound itself.
That makes total sense.
So he believed the physical universe had to have that exact same underlying harmony, like absolute rules.
Which makes the career advice he got in 1878 so incredibly funny in hindsight.
Oh, Jolly's advice. It's legendary.
It's so bad. So his professor, Philip von Jolly, basically tells him, hey, don't go into theoretical physics.
Just avoid it entirely.
Yeah, because Jolly's reasoning was that the field was almost complete. He seriously thought physics just needed a little bit of, final polishing around the edges.
Just dusting off the furniture.
Right. It's like telling a young, brilliant software engineer in 1995, hey, don't bother messing around with this internet thing. We already have fax machines. The communication problem is totally solved.
It's a great analogy. But to be fair to Jolly, he genuinely believed that because the principle of the conservation of energy had recently been established, the framework of the universe was essentially finished.
They thought they had the rule book.
Exactly. They thought all that remained was just calculating existing formulas out to a few more decimal places. But Planck, thankfully, completely ignored that advice.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. He wanted to understand those absolute rules of the universe for himself. So he dives headfirst into thermodynamics.
Which is the study of heat, energy, and work, right?
Yes. And particularly this concept of entropy, which is essentially the universe's tendency to move toward disorder over time.
Okay, and that obsession with absolute order, it leads him directly to the puzzle that basically shatters everything, the famous blackbody radiation problem.
Right, which was the great unsolved mystery of late 19th century physics.
So what exactly is a blackbody? for those of us who aren't physics professors?
So a black body is a theoretical object. It's something that perfectly absorbs all electromagnetic radiation that hits it. And the puzzle these physicists were wrestling with was, well, how does the intensity of the radiation emitted by this glowing object depend on its frequency and its temperature?
It sounds incredibly dense when you say it like that.
It does, I know.
But it's basically asking why things glow certain colors when you heat them up, right? Like why a piece of metal in a fire turns red and then it turns yellow and then eventually gets white hot.
Precisely. That's exactly it. And the crisis in physics at that time was that their existing mathematical laws just simply did not work across the entire color spectrum.
They were getting conflicting answers.
Totally conflicting.
Yeah.
So you had Wilhelm Wien, who had a law that correctly predicted the glow at high frequencies, but it completely failed at low frequencies.
Okay.
And then on the flip side, you had the Rayleigh-Jeans law. Now that one worked beautifully at low frequencies, but it created this massive catastrophic mathematical contradiction at high frequencies.
Ah, the famous ultraviolet catastrophe.
Yes, the ultraviolet catastrophe. Because classical physics, which treated light and energy as continuous waves, predicted that as an object got hotter, it should emit literally an infinite amount of high-frequency energy.
Like ultraviolet light or X-rays.
Right, infinite X-rays.
Which we know is physically impossible. I mean, otherwise just opening the door of a hot pizza oven would instantly vaporize you with a blast of infinite X-rays.
Exactly, you'd be toast. Literally. So classical physics is fundamentally broken here. The math just doesn't reflect reality.
And so, in 1900, Planck steps in to fix it. He sits down and derives a new mathematical law that actually matches the real-world glowing spectrum perfectly.
Right, he makes the curve fit.
He makes it fit. But to make his math work, he has to rely on Ludwig Boltzmann's statistical interpretation of thermodynamics. And the source points out, Planck hated this.
Oh, he despised it.
Yeah, he disliked atomism. He hated using probabilities instead of absolute laws. He actually later described this whole mathematical leap as a literal act of despair.
An act of despair.
Yeah, he said he was ready to sacrifice any of his previous convictions about physics just to get a formula that finally worked.
And out of that sheer mathematical despair comes the Planck postulate.
E equals h times nu.
Yes. Energy equals his newly discovered constant, multiplied by frequency. And to stop the equation from producing that infinite energy loop, he had to state that electromagnetic energy cannot just flow continuously like a wave.
It has to be broken up.
Right. It can only be emitted in quantized forms, like multiples of an elementary indivisible unit. He famously called these quantas the pennies of the atomic world.
Okay, let's unpack this. Think of classical physics up to this point like a continuous stream of water from a faucet. You could have any amount of water you want right down to the tiniest fraction of a drop.
Right, it's continuous.
But Planck suddenly realized, mathematically at least, that the universe actually dispenses energy more like an ATM. It only deals in specific, discrete denominations.
That's a really good way to visualize it.
You can't just withdraw $5.50 from an ATM. It has to be a whole $10 bill or a $20. Energy is chunked. It's like pixelated.
And that exact mechanism, the chunking, is how he solves the ultraviolet catastrophe.
How so?
Well, because high-frequency energy, like an X-ray, requires a massive chunk or denomination of energy to be emitted all at once. An object at a normal temperature simply doesn't have enough total thermal energy to afford emitting those massive chunks.
It doesn't have the budget for it.
Exactly. It doesn't have the budget. So it simply doesn't emit them at all, which entirely prevents that impossible infinite energy loop.
It is a brilliant solution. It really is.
Yeah.
But the tragic part is it completely destroys his beloved continuous classical universe.
What's fascinating here is that Planck didn't even believe his own math at first.
Wait, really?
Yeah, he thought this quantization, this whole chunking of energy thing was just a purely formal assumption.
Like a math hack.
Exactly, a neat mathematical trick to just fix a broken equation about glowing ovens. He did not think it represented a literal physical reality in the universe.
So he didn't think the universe was actually pixelated.
Not at all. He was essentially telling his colleagues, look, the math works if we pretend energy acts this way, but obviously it doesn't really act this way in nature.
That is the wildest irony. He accidentally writes the sheet music for quantum mechanics, but he spends the next 20 years desperately trying to arrange it so it sounds exactly like a classical Beethoven symphony.
That's a beautiful way to put it. The physicist Max Born actually noted later that Planck had a conservative mind with nothing of the revolutionary in it.
Which is so funny given what he started.
Right. For years, Planck poured immense effort into trying to reintegrate his action quantum back into classical theory. He was terrified of wild speculation.
He even fought against Albert Einstein on this, didn't he?
He did. When Einstein took Planck's math and proposed the hypothesis of light quanta, which is what we now call photons, Planck initially rejected it completely.
Because it threatened the wave theory of light.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was terrified it would throw the theory of light back centuries to Isaac Newton's outdated ideas. He fiercely defended the classical wave theory.
And the source material highlights this incredibly cynical observation Planck made later in his life. He wrote that a new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents, but rather because its opponents eventually die.
Which is a very, very bleak view of scientific progress.
It is, but I have to push back on him a little bit here. I mean, he wins the 1918 Nobel Prize in physics, literally for his discovery of energy quanta. The whole world is celebrating him for this.
Right, he's the hero of physics.
Yet he spends years trying to basically prove his own discovery wrong while simultaneously complaining that old scientists are too stubborn to change their minds. That feels incredibly hypocritical.
It does sound a bit contradictory on the surface.
Especially since the historical record shows his own ideas were actually accepted quite rapidly by his peers.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, we actually see a profound integrity in Planck's stubbornness.
How do you mean?
Well, yes, he was deeply uncomfortable with the quantum, but his ultimate loyalty was never to his own personal preferences. His loyalty was to objective facts.
So when the facts became undeniable, he caved.
Exactly. When the experimental evidence became insurmountable, especially after the 1911 Solvay conference.
Oh, where Einstein brilliantly laid out all the anomalies of classical physics.
Right. At that point, Planck conceded. And he didn't just begrudgingly accept Einstein's theories, he actively championed them.
That takes a lot of intellectual humility.
It really does. As dean of Berlin University, he established a new professorship specifically for Einstein. They actually became very close friends, frequently meeting just to play music together.
The classical pianist and the quantum violinist finally finding some harmony.
Yeah, exactly.
But that harmony is so fragile, because just as his scientific universe finally settles, the actual real world around him completely fractures.
It really does.
We move from the collapse of classical physics to the brutal realities of the First World War and the slow collapse of German society.
Caught up in the initial nationalistic fervor of World War I, Planck actually endorsed the war at first. He was one of the signers of the Manifesto of the 93 Intellectuals.
Which basically served as German war propaganda. Yeah.
Yes. But as the devastation dragged on, his stance shifted dramatically. He realized that destruction was just senseless.
So what do you do?
He began focusing entirely on preserving the scientific community across borders. He started issuing a slogan to his colleagues: persevere and continue working.
Just keep the science alive.
Exactly. Keep the lights on.
And following the war, during the Weimar Republic, his deeply traditional nature remained. Now, keeping strict impartiality here and just reporting what the sources say, he was a political conservative.
Right.
He actually disagreed with the introduction of universal suffrage, and he viewed the subsequent rise of the Nazi dictatorship as the tragic result of what he called the ascent of the rule of the crowds.
Put yourself in his shoes in 1933. You are 74 years old. You have spent your entire life believing in logical systems and institutions in order.
Right.
And suddenly, your government is taken over by violent, irrational extremism. You are watching your Jewish colleagues and friends being humiliated and expelled from their academic positions.
It's horrifying.
Do you tear the whole system down, or do you try to quietly manage the damage from the inside?
As the president of the Kaiser Wilhelm Society, Planck chose the latter, right?
He did. He initially believed the crisis would pass. When Otto Hahn suggested a mass protest by professors, Planck pragmatically pointed out that if 30 protested, 150 others would just eagerly take their empty positions.
Which is probably true, sadly. But here's where it gets really interesting, and honestly, it's pretty chilling. In May of 1933, Planck decides to request a face-to-face meeting with Adolf Hitler.
A direct meeting.
Yes, he walks in and tries to stop the expulsion of Jewish scientists. He argues that forcing them out would, quote, kill German science, and he emphasized that Jews could be good Germans.
And how did Hitler respond?
He completely dismisses him. Hitler equates all Jews with communists, and he just erupts into a rage, shutting down any basis for logical negotiation.
It's just absolute irrationality.
Completely. So following that failure, Planck had to operate in the shadows.
Which he did. He provocatively held an official commemorative meeting for the Jewish chemist Fritz Haber after Haber died in exile.
That was a bold move.
It was. And he succeeded in secretly enabling a number of Jewish scientists to continue working within the Kaiser Wilhelm Society Institutes for several years.
Under the radar.
Exactly. But because of this quiet defiance, he was heavily attacked by the proponents of Aryan physics, like Johannes Stark.
Oh, right. Stark publicly branded Planck, along with Heisenberg and Sommerfeld, as white Jews. The government even opened an investigation claiming Planck had Jewish ancestry.
Which he had to formally deny, just to keep his position and protect the society.
I just keep asking myself, how does someone whose entire life is built on logical reasoning compute the absolute irrationality of his own government?
It's impossible to compute.
And on top of that, how does he compute the relentless personal devastation he experiences? I mean, his life reads like a biblical tragedy.
It really is heartbreaking.
He lost his first wife, Marie, in 1909. His oldest son, Karl, was killed in action at Verdun in World War I. Both of his daughters, Grete and Emma, died in childbirth just 2 years apart.
Just one blow after another.
And it doesn't stop. In 1944, his home in Berlin, which contained his entire life's work, all his scientific records, his correspondence, was completely annihilated by an Allied bombing raid.
Observers at the time noted that he endured these losses stoically. His wartime mantra to persevere became his personal anchor.
Just kept working.
He threw himself into his work. He was traveling, giving public talks, even climbing mountains in the Alps well into his 80s.
Oh.
But the final, most devastating blow came at the very end of the Second World War. In 1944, his beloved surviving son, Erwin, was arrested by the Gestapo.
For his involvement in the July 20 plot to assassinate Hitler?
Yes. And despite Planck's desperate, heartbreaking appeals to the regime to spare him, Erwin was executed by the People's Court in January 1945.
I can't even imagine.
Friends noted that this final execution of his son destroyed much of Planck's remaining will to live.
It's unimaginable heartbreak. I mean, to survive that level of grief for as long as he did, he had to have had an incredibly strong foundation.
He did.
And the source material dives deeply into his philosophical and religious views, which seem to provide that bedrock.
Yeah, Planck was a tolerant Lutheran, but historians characterize his views as deeply deistic.
Meaning he believed in a creator, like a cosmic clockmaker who set the universe in motion, but not necessarily a personal God who intervenes in daily human affairs.
Exactly. But he firmly believed that both religion and science required a belief in God. As he eloquently put it, for believers, God is in the beginning, and for physicists, he is at the end of all considerations.
That's a beautiful quote.
It is. He rejected the atheist derision of religious symbols, warning that science shouldn't just mock belief. But simultaneously, he argued that a belief in miracles had to retreat and eventually vanish in the face of progressing science.
He demanded a reverence for truth above all else, no matter what.
And that reverence for truth forced a major philosophical shift in him over his life. Early on, he was a big proponent of Ernst Mach's positivism.
Okay, what's positivism?
Positivism is essentially the ultimate, I'll believe it when I see it mindset. Basically, if you can't measure it or observe it directly, it doesn't exist.
No, okay.
But Planck's own discovery of the quantum forced him to abandon that. He couldn't see the quantum, but the math proved it was there.
The ATM chunks of energy.
Right, so he embraced scientific realism instead.
Right.
He started believing there are objective realities and absolutes that exist independently of human observation.
It's like the deeper he went into the math, the more he felt he was uncovering the architecture of something profound. Listen to this quote from him in 1944. This is after all the tragedy, after discovering the quantum near the end of his life.
Let's hear it.
He says, quote, "As a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you as a result of my research about atoms this much. There is no matter as such. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent spirit. This spirit is the matrix of all matter."
Wow.
So what does this all mean? When you step back and look at his life, there is this incredible, almost poetic symmetry.
There really is.
Here is a man who discovered the fundamental pixels of the universe, the cold, hard, discrete quanta of energy. He mathematically broke down reality into its smallest, most mechanical parts.
And yet
He ultimately concludes that those pieces are held together by an intelligent spirit. He starts with an act of mathematical despair and ends with profound spiritual awe.
this raises an important question, perhaps the most important question for any modern thinker. How do we reconcile the cold, hard mathematics of our physical reality with a deep, persistent reverence for the unknown?
It's the ultimate balancing act.
It is. And Planck's true greatness wasn't just in formulating an equation. His greatness was in his intellectual courage.
Because he followed the data.
He was willing to follow the truth of the universe, the objective facts, even when those facts destroyed the beautiful, continuous classical world he loved so much. He surrendered his ego to the data.
And that is the ultimate takeaway for you listening right now. True breakthroughs in our lives, whether it's in science and business or just in our personal growth, almost always require us to abandon our deepest, most comfortable assumptions.
Just as Planck had to sacrifice his beloved classical physics in a literal act of despair.
Right. Progress isn't always this joyous leap forward into the future. Sometimes it is a reluctant, painful step into the unknown. We're dragging our feet the whole way.
But we take the step because the truth demands it.
Exactly. We have to be willing to break our own rules if the universe proves they just don't work anymore.
It's about being brave enough to let go.
So we'll leave you with this final thought to mull over. If Max Planck's monumental discovery of the quantum, which is the very fabric of our modern technological world, was truly just a mathematical act of despair to fix a localized problem with glowing ovens.
Such a small problem.
Right. How many other foundational truths of our universe are currently hiding right now behind a stubborn equation or even an everyday problem at your job that we just haven't been desperate enough to break yet?